I want to carve a banjo. I want to make a banjo neck from scratch. Like, I don't want to just take one that was made and put it on a body that was already made. I want to make a banjo neck from scratch. How do I do that? And the guy says, well, what you do is, he's like, get yourself some nice sharp tools and a solid piece of wood, and then you get rid of everything that doesn't look like a banjo neck. And that's what making a documentary is. You start out with a nice solid chunk of information, and you carve away everything that doesn't look like your story.
I think in some ways what Tony's trying to say is that the way you shot that, where you never saw her face the entire time. You as the viewer, you start to really feel that person and feel what that person's thinking, and you don't feel a person in the train with a camera. You don't feel a pace. You don't feel like an intent. And then in the end, when you show the person, all of a sudden it becomes human, you know. And then there's a moment where everybody can relate to that person, and that's a brilliant, sensitive thing to do.
And I didn't want to force the shot of like, okay, now let's shoot a shot of Laura casually strolling wistfully down the sidewalk by herself because her husband killed himself. I didn't want to force that. Okay, here she is just washing her dishes like a normal person. No, I wanted, because I knew these stories that they're telling me about what it was like when she found her husband's suicide note, that was more compelling than watching her try to be normal, clicking on Facebook or playing solitaire on her computer. So I had to be very careful with that.
People have to trust you to be the steward of their story.
When they're having a genuine moment, you have to be honest to present it truthfully, because these are real people and real emotions and real words, not script that Tim wrote. And you know, when you're telling the story of a man's life and how he learned how to play piano in the KCK public school system, and the nights where he watched the sun come up in the Mutual Musicians Foundation, you have a duty to tell that story truthfully, and then you get stuck with, well, I have a 12-minute story that I have to make in 4. Okay, well, what's the neck? And that's where it gets hard too.
It's a totally sacred relationship.
Oh, and to like violate it and screw somebody over with that, I think that would be one of the worst.
Well, that's the whole thing. Is like, just don't be an asshole.
I think it's important to pick a subject that you're at least passionate about.
It was fascinating, but like it was just really difficult for me to connect with these people, and I wasn't expecting that with all the love that I was prepared for. So when I got to him, I was bitter, not gonna lie, but I connected with him and I bonded with him, and he cared about the project, and he like cared. I felt like he cared about me. So. And he loved the fact that he was like, wow, someone thinks that my art is interesting. Someone wants to showcase me.
Like, find something that's near and dear to your heart so that you can have something relatable to the people, because they're going to know that you're genuine.
Yeah, it does help if you play and you're involved. Like if you did a rural grit one, for instance, that'd be awesome. You know, because you're part of that.
We could do like one on chubby bearded guys.
Yeah,
like,
we've got that covered.
Right.
I think we really do have it covered.
I'm passionate about that.
Tony was gonna. When's your taco documentary?
When's that coming out?
Documentary.
Oh my God, the match was happening.
It's good stuff. I think yeah, exceptional.
So I know that when I'm working, I like to tell people a little bit about my intentions, you know, what I'm doing with this, and really just try to connect with them and talk with them. And so that's, I think, a big part of what helps me is this interview process and really talking to people.
And then I always end with the same thing, which is, you know, what's your legacy? You know, how would you like to be remembered? You know, because a lot of times I have found that it's almost always the same thing, and it can be music or it can be art. A lot of times it has to do with giving. That basically what they want to do is give back or add to the thing that they are, either be it an artist or a musician or really anything that they do.
It's like I talk to people. I mean, when I talk to somebody, I like to be very authentic. I like to really talk to them and feel them out.
People can tell if you're full of shit too. That's
For
why
real.
people don't trust Dave.
Yeah.
I've been 12 years, I still don't.
Yeah.
That's a moment.
Dave's not.
Or that was a great story. Could you tell it to me again, like 5 minutes, you know, like just a little faster? No, you don't get that.
Sometimes you do.
Yeah,
Sometimes you do. And,
Well, yeah.
it depends on how much you don't. Hey, can you tell me about that
Yeah.
time when your fiance killed himself again? No, you're not going to fucking do that. But if you're, you know, if you're doing stuff that's lighter in tone, if you're doing something, you know, then
I've
you
done it.
can-
I've said like, oh, you said that great. Could you, cut that down? Because I've had people, they're great speakers, but they'll go on.
Because it's their
You know,
life.
and
It's their
like,
life
I
story.
wanna, because I want to, I'll just be upfront. I want to say it. I need just a little cut it out. So if you can say that a little tighter, we'll work together on that.
But here is my advice to you. When you ask someone a question, don't be thinking about what your next question is. Listen to them speak to you. Focus on them and look them in the eye and listen to what they're saying and nod your head that you understand. Don't talk while they're talking. Don't talk at the end of when they're talking. If someone starts to cry, stay shutting up. Continue to shut up. Let them have their moment. This is a moment that belongs to them. And you can be intuitive, you can be empathetic, you need to be an empath, and you need to listen to what people are saying because they're having a conversation. It's not an interview, it's a conversation. One of the most important things that I ever learned from this woman was that when you're done with your interview and you've exhausted all of your questions, that you look around and you look at your cinematographer and you go, hey, do you have a question that maybe you want to ask that occurred to you? And if they go, absolutely, I was thinking this, and then they have a question, and at the end, when you're all done, then you look at the person and you say, Bill, was there anything else that you wanted to say that maybe that we didn't know to ask you? And he says, no, I think that's about it, about the ammunition plant. Unless you want to hear about the explosions. Fuck yeah, let's hear about the explosions. Let's do this. And so there, another 5, 10, 15 minutes worth of content about the explosion. And so that's always been my analogy is like, unless you want to hear about the explosions, and I always want to hear about the explosion. And the explosion is always coming from something that you didn't know to ask.
IFCKC. Join us Wednesdays at 7:30 in the Buffalo Room at the Westport Flea Market.